My name is Briar Lockwood, and I'm 37 years old. I was born into a family that made its fortune long before I learned how to spell the word legacy. We had land, old money, and a reputation that moved courtroom decisions without a word spoken. But I was always the last Lockwood anyone noticed, the youngest daughter, the quiet one, the mistake who didn't marry into power or build empires, just repaired fences and filed taxes for a company no one thought twice about. My sister ran biotech. My brother ran campaigns. I ran. That's how it felt. Like I was always running to keep up with a life that never wanted me in it. For years, I told myself it didn't matter. I had Hugo. I had the house. I had something of my own. Until the morning, I walked into my kitchen and found out my husband had taken everything from me. Everything but the one secret he never saw coming. The envelope was ivory, heavy, no return address. It sat on the counter like a bullet waiting to be loaded. I opened it. My fingers shook before my brain caught up. Finalized divorce decree. Effective 5 days ago. Filed in Multnomah County Court. Property transferred. Assets liquidated. Signatures notarized. My name. His name. Stamped. Done. I stumbled back. The chair behind me scraped wood against tile. He said, couldn't feel my legs. The ink blurred. The second envelope was smaller. Bank notices. Every account I'd ever held jointly with Hugo? Zero balance. The checking account I used for groceries? Closed. There was a new name on the deed to the house. Hugo Vance. Sole owner. He didn't even leave a note. Only a text that came 30 minutes later. I'm sorry it had to be this way. I'll handle everything. Handle what, Hugo? My life? My future? I called his number. Straight to voicemail. I tried his office, disconnected. I called my sister Celia. She didn't answer. I drove to the firm. His desk was empty. A new name on the door. It wasn't an ambush. It was a mass execution, and I was the last to fall. People always say, you never see the knife until it's already in you. But I did. He'd been sharpening it for months. I just mistook it for silverware. Cut scene. Evening. The mailbox creaked when I pulled it open. Inside, a storage unit receipt. V. Lockwood. My maiden name. But I hadn't rented anything. I drove out that night. Storage Mart, Unit 309. The lock clicked open like something waiting to breathe. Inside, a metal box. A label written in Hugo's handwriting. For her eyes only. My hands trembled. Inside, cash. Sealed bag. Unmarked. 3 USB drives. Encrypted. And photographs. Not printed from a phone, developed film. Glossy. Cold. Hugo. Suited. Smiling. Shaking hands with 2 men. Both in government windbreakers. And in one photo, Celia. She wasn't supposed to be there. She hadn't spoken to Hugo in 5 years. I looked down at the photo again. The timestamp said otherwise. Mid-February. A month before the papers were filed. My chest felt like it caved inward. Wind hissed through the metal frame. Somewhere behind me, a door creaked. I turned fast. Empty. But my skin crawled. Like the air itself was watching me. I slammed the box shut, locked the unit, and backed away. There are moments when your life stops being your own. Mine ended the second Hugo signed my name to something I never saw. But what he didn't know, what he never calculated, was that he didn't just take my house. He took my past and buried the truth inside it. The walls inside Finn Calder's office were cold, steel gray. No art, just shadows. You're not here for a therapist, he said, not looking up. You want truth, not comfort. I want the truth before it buries me. He dropped a flash drive into his laptop. No password. He looked impressed. Smart husband. Stupid mistake. The room filled with digital noise, contracts, spreadsheets, metadata. Hugo's paper trail, mapped and time-stamped like someone tracing a murder weapon. Finn's fingers moved fast. This isn't fraud. This is federal. He's moving ghost money through shell core tied to defense contracts. Construction that doesn't exist. Trucks never driven. Materials never delivered. What's the name on it? I asked. He turned the screen. Vanden LLC. Under Authorized Officer, Briar Lockwood Vance. I didn't blink. Not until my throat locked and the cold sweat hit the base of my spine. That's not my signature. He zoomed in. Tell that to the IRS. Or the DOJ. The air smelled like burnt coffee and legal ruin. Cut scene. Late afternoon. I walked down Burnside with the USB buried deep in my coat pocket. Phone on silent. Every face looked familiar in the wrong way. Hugo had used my name, my identity, not just erased me. He turned me into a crime. I turned the corner. A white car slowed behind me. Not stopping. Not passing. Shadowed windows. I ducked into a bodega, pretended to browse gum and cigarettes I didn't need. Watched the car slide by. Kept going. Noted the plate. Didn't write it down. I didn't want it on paper yet. People don't go to jail for losing everything. They go to jail for not knowing they're already in the story someone else wrote. Who profits? I ask myself, who needs me erased? There's always an answer. It just doesn't want to be found. Cut scene. Back in my car. Dusk bleeding into black. Streetlights flickered like warning signs. I pulled into a parking structure. Level 3. No other cars. Except one. Familiar shape. Hugo's old Acura. Parked like it was meant to be seen. Door slightly ajar. I approached slow. Keys ready. Inside the passenger seat, nothing. But taped under the glove compartment, I found a folded document. Typed. Legal format. Filing intention. Petition to assign all marital debt to Briar Lockwood Vance. Effective next quarter. Hugo, I whispered. You planned this in phases. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. I answered. No voice. Just breathing. Heavy. Intentional. Then a click. Disconnected. It was never just a divorce. This was a disposal. Cut scene. I drove straight to the one person I didn't want to see. Celia. Her condo overlooked the water. Clean, clinical, too many mirrors. She opened the door with the expression of someone already exhausted by a conversation that hadn't happened. You look like hell, she said. You look like you've been lying. She sipped white wine. No welcome. I need answers. And I need less drama. I threw the photo on her counter. Her hand froze midair. You were there. With him. With Hugo. 2 months ago. Her silence wasn't denial. It was calculation. Do you believe in justice, Briar? She asked softly. No. I believe in survival. She poured another glass. For herself. Not me. Hugo came to me for capital. I gave it. In return, I got silence. Nothing illegal. He's framing me. She hesitated. He made deals. With bigger people. You were a name to carry weight. You always were. Even when you didn't know it. And you let him do it. Celia turned to the window. You always wanted a legacy. Be careful what parts of the past you chase. They might be chasing you back. A beat passed. Then she said it. You were never supposed to find that storage unit. I stared at her. The wine glass in her hand trembled. Not guilt. Fear. She knew something I didn't. You didn't come here just for answers, she said, backing toward the hallway. No. I followed her shadow. I came to find out if you're the one who started the fire. Celia stopped. Spoke without turning. I didn't light it, Briar. But I know who will. If I don't find Hugo, I won't just lose everything. I'll lose who I am. Seattle was colder than I remembered. Not the weather. The people. The skyline. The silence between sounds. Celia's warning echoed in my ears like foghorns in the distance. You were never supposed to find that storage unit. I hadn't slept. My eyes burned. My breath tasted like metal and regret. The bus hissed as I stepped off. Rain kissed my jacket. A slow, deliberate mist. Cutscene. Pike Place Market. Tourists. Locals. But no one made eye contact. I kept moving. Head down. Burner phone in my pocket. A thumb drive zipped in my boot lining. A message buzzed. No name. Turn around slowly. Gray coat. Red beanie. Keep walking. I obeyed. 2 stalls ahead. A man watched me while pretending to inspect fish. Then another text. You're being followed. Not by me. I veered left, ducked through a coffee shop side door out the back. Breath tight. Legs moving. This wasn't a panic run. It was survival. There's no such thing as coincidence, I whispered to myself. Only bad timing disguised as fate. Cutscene. Inside a low-lit diner. Windows fogged from steam. Radio static hums behind the clink of dishes. I stirred lukewarm coffee. A woman slid into the booth across from me. Black blazer. No name tag. Sharp cheekbones. Eyes like frostbite. She didn't introduce herself. I'm not FBI, she said, but they're watching you. And you're bleeding data. From where? Same place Hugo used to pump funds. Nolan Evergreen. His silent partner. Why help me? Because you're not the mark. You're the decoy. She dropped a business card. No name. Just a phone number and a time. Burn this when you leave. Cutscene. Rooftop of the Jackson Building. I stood under a flickering exit light. The city stretched below me like a wound stitched in neon. Celia waited, arms crossed, sunglasses on despite the dark. You always liked drama, I said. You always liked pain. I want the truth. She tossed me a manila folder. Inside, the land deed. Not a copy. The original. Signed by my grandfather. Stamped with a trust seal. Sol estuard briar locud. Dated exactly 6 months before he died. This never went through probate, I muttered. Because it was protected. He didn't trust the others. You knew. I did. And Hugo. He knew after you married him. That's why he stayed longer than he should have. He thought you'd never find it. I stepped closer. You sold me to him. She didn't answer, but her silence was the only confirmation I needed. Cutscene. Back at my motel. I laid the folder on the bed, pulled out the USB from my boot, plugged it into my laptop. Encrypted folders. One cracked open, estate red line. Inside a scan memo. To Nolan Evergreen. From Gretchen Vale Esq. Subject. Lockwood Deed Custody Strategy. My heart hit the bottom of my ribs like a hammer. Gretchen. Our family's attorney. The woman who held my hand at Grandpa's funeral. Who said, you'll always have a home here. She was behind the transfer strategy. The forged mental health filing. She wasn't cleaning up Hugo's mess. She was orchestrating it. Cutscene. A knock at the door. 3 quick taps. Pause. Then one more. Not housekeeping. I approached slow, hand on my taser. Looked through the peephole. Empty. No one. Then, a whisper from behind. You're not safe here. I spun around. No one. Just an open window. Breeze, curling the curtain like fingers. My pulse throbbed in my throat. I knew what this meant. This wasn't about the money anymore. This was about the name. What if the only way to clear my name is to burn his to the ground? The warehouse in Eugene smelled like old oil and wet concrete. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. One of them buzzed like an insect trapped in a jar. Finn Calder stood near a folding table. Laptop open, sleeves rolled up. His jaw was tight. You sure you want to do this? He asked. No, I said. But wanting has nothing to do with surviving. He slid a phone across the table. Burner. Fresh SIM. Message goes out in 10 minutes, he said. The bait. If Hugo's still breathing, he'll bite. And if he doesn't... Finn didn't look up. Then someone else will. Cut scene. The message went live. A single encrypted post, routed through channels Hugo used to trust. I offered what he wanted most, cooperation. Silence. A deal. I leaned against a cold pillar and waited. Every thriller has a moment where the hunter becomes the hunted. The trick is realizing which side you're on before the lights go out. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. Wrong move, Briar. I smiled despite myself. People who say that, I whispered, are already too late. Cut scene. The Lockwood estate sat on the edge of the woods, like a memory no one wanted to claim. Boarded windows. Dead leaves piled at the door. The place hadn't been lived in since Grandpa died. I shouldn't have come alone. I came anyway. The door gave with a sigh. Inside, dust floated in the beam of my flashlight. The air smelled like pine rot and paper. I moved fast. Library. Desk. Hidden drawer. I found the letters exactly where he said they'd be. Handwritten. Careful. Angry in places. They will eat each other for the land. One note read. Let them try. A truth people learn too late. Power doesn't corrupt. It reveals. The floor creaked behind me. I spun. Nothing. But the air felt wrong. Thick. Heavy. Gasoline. My throat tightened. The flame came from nowhere. A low whoosh. Then another. The walls caught like they'd been waiting for it. I ran. The heat chased me down the hall. Wood cracked. Glass exploded. I burst through the front door as the roof groaned behind me. The estate went up in a roar. Orange against black. A funeral pyre for a family that never knew how to stay whole. I fell to my knees in the dirt, coughing, watching my inheritance burn. Cut scene. Celia stood at the treeline, silhouetted by firelight. Calm. Too calm. You always were sentimental, she said. You knew, I rasped. About the fire. I knew it would come, she corrected. I just didn't know when. My hands shook. You made a deal with Hugo. Yes. With Gretchen. Her eyes flickered. There it is, she said softly. You finally said her name. The betrayal didn't hit like a punch. It was quieter, like realizing the ground has been gone for miles. Why? I asked. Celia's voice dropped. Because I was tired of being second. Because Gretchen promised immunity. Because some families don't survive honesty. She stepped back as sirens wailed in the distance. You should leave, she said, before the story decides you're the villain. Cut scene. Finn's car tore down the road, headlights cutting through smoke. You're on fire, he said, scanning me. Literally. I need proof, I said. Something that doesn't burn. He nodded once. I found it. We drove. Fast. No headlights for the first mile. Inside an old records office. Finn pulled a sealed file from a locker. Gretchen Vale, he said. Estate attorney. Power of attorney. Beneficiary clause buried under environmental stewardship language. I flipped pages. My hand steadied. She's been steering assets for decades, Finn continued. Using trusts. Mental fitness filings. Strategic fires. She wanted the land, I said. All of it. And your name erased, he added, so no one could contest it. The last page stopped my breath. A memo. Signed. Dated years ago. If Briar Lockwood contests. Initiate fire code protocol. I laughed once. Sharp. Broken. They plan my life like a controlled burn. Finn met my eyes. Then it's time to change the weather. Outside, the night hummed with sirens and secrets. I tucked the file under my arm. If I wanted to survive, I had to kill the ghost of my own name. The gala was a stage set for power. Chandeliers. murmured alliances, smiles that cut deeper than daggers. I stood at the entrance, clutching my clutch like it was armor. Harper Dayton, in a sleek black suit, leaned close. "You don't have to do this alone," he whispered. I didn't look at him. "I already am." Inside, the room glittered. Wealth so thick it tasted like betrayal. A pianist played something slow, haunting. "Success leaves clues," I murmured, quoting something I once heard. "And the guilty always slip." My eyes scanned the crowd. Political donors, judges, lawyers, friends of Gretchen Vale, ESQ. She glided through the room in white silk, the color of purity by design, not truth. She smiled when she saw me. That was the first red flag. I threaded through the crowd, slow enough to be watched, fast enough to be unnoticed. Lights gleamed off wine glasses. Cigarette smoke curled like secrets. I found the rooftop access door. Harper followed. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Only one way to find out." We stepped out. Rain slicked glass tiles. Wind snapped at my hair like claws. She was already there. Gretchen Valley, backlit by city lights. "Mrs. Lockwood," she said, like we were characters in someone else's script. I ignored her and activated the speaker in my purse. The small device transmitted our conversation back to a secure server. Half my evidence was already live, streaming to watching eyes. "You need to stop," she said. "You don't know what you're playing with." "Try me," I said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I didn't build this city by mistakes. Her confidence was poison. Polished. Dangerous. A waiter passed. A tray of champagne flutes. My eyes locked on Gretchen's. I leaned forward. Why bury the deed? Why make me the scapegoat? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gestured over the city. Power isn't owned. It's borrowed, and everyone forgets to pay back. Wind gusted. The city lights pulsed. I edged closer. Then she dropped it like a bomb. "You're not the first Lockwood to be erased." Her words sank like lead. I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" I asked. Gretchen turned. Eyes flicked toward the edge of the balcony. Tall, sharp, unguarded. So was I. "It was never about the land," she whispered. "It was about the lineage. The name. The story behind the name." The truth hit harder than any betrayal. Celia's warning came back. "You're not the mark. You're the decoy." Gretchen smiled then, like she'd known all along. "Everything Hugo took from you? That was the distraction." My breath came quick. Her words cut the calm. Then she shifted stance. "Sign the waiver. Forfeit all claims. Walk away." I saw the crowd below. The flashing cameras. The smug faces. I didn't move. Her voice dropped. "I have already filed to declare you mentally unfit as of next week." My heart skipped. Legally unfit. My inheritance erased. My rights gone. The city below seemed so distant. My pulse pounded like a war drum. "You think you can blackmail me?" I said. "No," she replied. "I can bury you." I stichte het. At the lights. At the night that had tasted like hope and turned to ash. Then I reached into my purse. The hidden speaker activated. Voices echoed in the room below. Lawyers stopped mid-conversation. Judges turned. A few faces went pale. Because now everyone could hear every word we'd spoken. Because I had more than half evidence. Because the truth was no longer a whisper. Gretchen's eyes widened. She hadn't expected this. A flicker of fear. Just for a moment. Then she composed the mask. "They'll shut it down," she said. "They always do." I smiled. Not this time. Wind slapped my face. I felt alive. And then it happened. Someone shouted from below. "What's going on up there?" Security radios crackled. Gretchen's jaw tightened. Her composure slipped. And suddenly the world seemed too loud. Too close. Too real. With every eye on us. I said quietly. Turned too late, and I was already done losing. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fresh beer. Flashbulbs popped outside the double doors. Inside, everything was quiet enough to hear breathing. Mine came shallow, measured, controlled. I sat at the defense table, hands folded, eyes forward. If you look nervous, people decide you're guilty before the judge ever speaks. Someone once said fear is the loudest confession. I refused to give them one. Across the aisle, Gretchen Vale sat perfectly still. Gray suit, pearl earrings, spine straight. The kind of woman who believed silence was a weapon. The bailiff called the room to order. Cut scene. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, we move to unseal the federal indictment. The words landed like a dropped plate. Gretchen didn't move, but her lawyer did, just slightly. A hand tightening on a pen, a breath held too long. Documents slid across the bench. Gwairfroð, real estate manipulation, coercive guardianship filings, arson tied to asset seizure. A web, years wide, names I recognized, names I didn't. Then the final charge, conspiracy to defraud heirs through abuse of fiduciary duty. That one was personal. The judge adjusted her glasses. Ms. Vale, she said calmly, please stand. For the first time, Gretchen hesitated. It was barely a second. But power is fragile like that. It cracks before it shatters. She rose. I've served this family for decades, Gretchen said. Everything I did was to preserve. The judge raised a hand. Federal agents. Two figures stepped forward from the back of the room. Badges caught the light. Metal clicked. The sound echoed. Cuffs. Gretchen's eyes found mine then. Not angry. Not pleading. Calculating. Even now. Even here. As they led her away, she leaned close enough for only me to hear. You think this ends me, she whispered. But this is only the beginning. I watched her go. Every empire believes that, I said softly. Right before the fall. Cut scene. The hallway outside the courtroom was chaos. Reporters. Microphones. Questions fired like bullets. Ms. Lockwood, did your husband knowingly frame you? Is it true the Lockwood estate was targeted for decades? Do you feel vindicated? I didn't answer. Vindication is a cheap word for expensive pain. Finn Calder appeared beside me, blocking cameras. Your ex-husband, he said quietly, was picked up in Panama this morning. Cooperation agreement voided. I closed my eyes. Hugo. I felt nothing. Someone once told me closure isn't about forgiveness. It's about exhaustion. I was finally tired enough to let him go. Cut scene. 3 weeks later. Rain again. Always rain. I stood at the ridge where the Lockwood estate used to be. Charred beams. Blackened earth. New survey stakes marking protected land boundaries. The land was mine now. Legally. Finally. Not because I fought harder, but because I waited longer. I unfolded the last letter my grandfather had written. The one Finn found hidden in a safety deposit box under my name. They will underestimate you, he'd written. That will be your shield. I smiled through the burn in my eyes. People confuse kindness with weakness, silence with ignorance, survival with surrender. That's how predators choose their prey. Celia never came to see me. Her lawyer sent a statement instead. No apology. Just distance. That was fine. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. They light the way forward. Cut scene. Night. My apartment window reflected a woman I almost didn't recognize. Still me, but sharper. There's a saying I carry now. You don't win by becoming ruthless. You win by becoming undeniable. I poured a glass of water, sat in the dark. For the first time in months, no footsteps outside. No cars idling too long. No breath on the phone line. Quiet. Real quiet. The kind that lets you hear your own heartbeat again. I thought about everything I'd lost. The house, the marriage, the name I once wore like a borrowed coat, and everything I'd kept. My truth, my agency, my future. Hugo took everything in the divorce. Money, property, safety. But what he took made her regret it for the rest of her life. Because Gretchen didn't just lose power. She lost the lie that power was hers to keep. I stepped onto the balcony and let the rain hit my face. Cold. Clean. There's another truth people don't like to admit. You can survive betrayal, but you can only be reborn after it. I turned off the light and went inside. Tomorrow I'd start again. Not as a Lockwood. Not as a wife. Just as a woman who learned, too late and just in time, that nothing worth keeping can ever be taken from you.